This video is sponsored by the Ultimate Freelancing Bundle by StudyWebDevelopment.com, which gives you everything you need to start your own freelancing business, including a 130-page in-depth guide, invoicing and client proposal templates, website templates, an SEO checklist, and much more. Visit the link in the description and use the code BRAD25 to get 25% off.
Hey, what's going on, guys? So kind of a cool little project today. We're going to be building a dynamic landing page with the time, and it's going to change this greeting here. It's going to change the background image based on the time of day, if it's morning, afternoon, or night. We're also going to be able to add our name here dynamically. So if I just put in Brad and enter, and then down here it says, what is your main focus today? So we could put in, we'll say make cool videos. And if I reload, that's going to stay there because we're going to store it in local storage, so basically in the browser. Now, the inspiration for this comes from a Chrome extension called Moment, which when you open up a new tab, it'll show this screen here. And a lot of you guys asked me about this. So basically, it just shows the time, says good afternoon or night, whatever time of day it is, has our name, has our focus. It has a couple additional things like the weather, a little to-do list. So if you want to add to this application afterwards and make it, a little more like this extension, you could do that. Or you can even make it an extension. I do have a video showing you how to create a simple Chrome extension. But I think we're going to just get this part of it done, at least today. Now, like I said, these are going to be stored in local storage, so we're going to be dealing with that. We're going to be dealing with DOM manipulation, the time, all this stuff is going to get inserted into the HTML through JavaScript. Okay, so let's jump into VS Code, and I just want to go over the file structure. I just have an index.html, a style CSS, and a main.js inside a JS and a CSS folder. And then you'll see I have this image, img folder, that has the morning image, the afternoon, and the night. Okay, so these images I got at pexels.com. You should be able to get them from the link in the description. I should have a code pen that will have, links to the images there. And of course, you could use any image you want. So let's get started here. I'm just going to start off with the HTML. Whoops, what did I just do? There we go. So for the title, let's say welcome. You can put whatever you'd like. And I'm going to add a link to the style sheet. So style CSS, and in the body, let's put a script. Source is going to go to js/main.js, and then for the body text here, I'm actually going to use a time tag with an ID of time, and I'm going to hard code the time in here for now. So it's what, 12:17. So I'll just put 12:17 and then some number of seconds. And then we're going to have AM or PM as well. So this ultimately, we're going to get rid of this. It'll get inserted through the JavaScript, but for now, I just want it there so we can style it. So let's do an H1 under that, and this is where we're going to have the greeting and the name. So both of those have to be in separate elements so we can grab onto them. So I'm going to do a span with the class, the ID of greeting, and we'll just do good afternoon. And again, this is going to get inserted through JavaScript later on. And then we'll do a span with the ID of name, and I'm just going to put my name. Okay, underneath the H1, let's put an H2. And this is going to ask us what our focus is. So we'll say, what is your focus, what do I say, for today? And then under that, we'll have another H2, but I'm going to give this an ID of focus so that we can grab onto it. And for now, I'll just say, again, make cool videos. Now, both the focus and the name, we need these to be editable. That's how I could actually click inside of it and change the content. And to do that, we just use an HTML5 attribute called content editable, and we set that to true. So we're going to do that on the name. We're also going to do that on focus on this H2 right here. So we'll say content editable true. And I'm pretty sure that should do it as far as the markup. So let's save that. Now I'm going to open this with live server, which I have running. I'm just going to stop and restart it. Live server is just a VS Code extension. I know a lot of you guys know that. You do want to run this on some kind of server, or you might have some issues with the images. All right, so this is what it looks like. Pretty crappy. So we're going to style it real quick, which isn't going to be much at all. Let's add a reset here. I'm going to say border box. Border box is going to be not border box. What am I doing? Box sizing is going to be border box. And then let's set margin to 0 and padding to 0. All right, now as far as the font, I'm actually going to use a font called Quicksand. So I'm going to just grab that real quick from fonts.google. And let's see, we'll search for Quicksand. Click the little plus button here. Click on this, and let's grab this link here and put this in our HTML right above the style CSS. Okay, and then let's grab this font family, and we can close that up, and let's put that in the body. All right, now the way that I'm going to style this is pretty simple. The body is going to be a flex box, so everything in it is going to be a flex item. So let's say display flex, and instead of them going, the elements going in a row, which they do by default, I want them in a column going up and down. So we're going to set flex direction to column. All right, we also want to align everything. So let's say align items. Everything is going to be centered. So justify content center, and let's do text align center. And then for the height, we want to make sure it takes up the entire viewport. So let's do height 100 VH, and it should be good. And I'm just going to set the color to black by default. Okay, so if we save that and take a look, now you can see everything is centered. Obviously that we need to deal with the text sizing and the text spacing here. So back in our CSS, let's grab the time ID and let's set the font size. Let's do 8 rem. And the H1 and the H2s, I'm going to leave the same size, the initial size, but I'm just going to add a margin bottom to space things out a little bit. And let's do 3 rem for that. And for the H2, let's do a margin bottom of 0.5 rem. And I want the H2 to be a little lighter without having to mess with the colors. So I'm going to do an opacity of 0.6. Okay, and the very last thing we need to do here is a simple media query, because I just want the time, that text, I want it to be a little smaller on smaller screens. So let's say a max width, when the screen is a max width of 700 pixels or less than that, then we're going to take the time element and we're going to change the font size to 6 rem from 8 rem. Okay, so now if we take a look, it should look like that. All right, and the background image, obviously that's going to get inserted through JavaScript because it depends on the time of day, you know, what background image we show. So now we're ready to jump into main.js. And when you're dealing with vanilla JavaScript, there's so many different ways that you can write your code. I try to keep it very practical and self-explanatory. If you want to do things a little differently, that's absolutely fine. So first thing I'm going to do here is just select my DOM elements. So let's say const, and we want to grab time. I'm going to use document.getElementById, because everything that we're grabbing is by ID, so we'll just use that. I'm just going to put a comma here so I don't have to keep writing const. And then let's grab the greeting. So say document.getElementById and greeting. All right, and then I'll just copy this down twice. This one here is going to be, what is this, name? So greeting, name, and we also want focus. These are all things that we need to basically interact with in some way. Okay, so those are our DOM elements. Next thing we're going to do is create a function here to show the time. And we're going to call it we're going to call the show time function within itself every second to update the time every second, and that way we can actually see the seconds on the screen updating. So let's say function show time. And let's, I'm just going to use let here, and let's do today. I'll just call this today, and we'll say new date, new space date. So that's going to give us the current date and time. And then what we need to do is basically pluck out the hours, the minutes, and the seconds. And we're going to put those in variables. So we'll say hour equals today dot get hours, which is a method we can call on a time. We also want min, which is going to be today dot get minutes. Whoops. And then we also want the seconds. So today dot get seconds. Okay, so now that we have those, the next thing I want to do is figure out if it's AM or PM. So let's say set AM or PM. And we're going to do this with a simple, we're going to basically assign either AM or PM to a variable depending on a condition. So let's say const, we'll call this AM, PM. And we're going to use a ternary operator, which is like a shorthand if statement. So we're going to take the hour, and we want to see if that is greater than or equal to 12. Now, by default, hour, when you call today.getHours, it's going to be a number between 0 and 23. So we're basically seeing if it's before 12 or equal to 12. If so we're going to use a ternary here, which is a question mark. Then we're going to output PM, or we're going to put PM in this variable. Else, which is a colon, we want AM. Okay, so that will set AM or PM. Another thing I want to do is I want to do a 12-hour format, because if we don't do this, it's going to be like 13, 14, and I don't want that. I just want, the 12-hour format. So the way that we can do this is we can take hour, which, remember, is going to be, what is it, 0 to 23, and then we're going to basically set that to hour, and then we want to use the modulus operator, which is the percentage, and we want to say 12, or if it's 12. And then that way, instead of being 13, it'll be 1. It'll be 1 p.m. instead of 13 o'clock. So next thing we want to do is output the time. So I'm going to take that time element, and I'm going to do inner HTML so that we can output something into it. And I'm going to put some backticks in here because I'm using a template literal, or a template string. And with this syntax, we can add in money sign and then curly braces, and we can put a variable in here. So the very first thing I want is the hour, right? And then after the hour, I just want a colon, and I'm actually going to wrap that in a span. So I'm going to say span, colon, and span. And then the next thing I want is the minutes. So I'll go ahead and put in the minutes. Then another span with a colon. And then I want the seconds. So sec, and that should give us the time. Now, once I output this, you're going to see that there's an issue with it, but we'll fix it afterwards. Now, we want to call this show time every second. Okay, once it's called once, it should call every second. We do that with set timeout. So set timeout takes in a function, either a self-calling function or, in this case, show time, and then it takes in an interval. So when do we want to call this? It's every second, so we'll do 1,000 milliseconds, okay, which is 1 second. And then finally down here, I'm just going to say run, and we'll call show time. All right, so let's save that, and let's see what happens if we go to our browser. And there we go, it's working. Now, the problem that I mentioned, you can't tell yet because there's no 0, 1, 0, 2, and so on. I could sit here and wait, but basically when it gets to 1 second, it's just going to be a 1 with no 0. Same thing with the minute. If it was 12:01, right now it would just say 12:1. Okay, now what I want to do is add zeros to the number if it needs it. In fact, I guess I can just show you right here. We're almost to 01. So as soon as it hits here, see, that doesn't look right. You want to have a 0 in front of it. So what we'll do is create another function. let's just call this add 0. Okay, now this add 0, it's going to take in a number, and the way we want to do this is we want to return a number. So let's return, we're just going to run this through parse int, which will parse it as an int, and we want to parse the number that's passed in, base 10, meaning just, you know, regular 1 through 10, and then we want to have a condition here. So we want to say if this is greater than 10, not greater than, if this is less than 10, then we need to add a 0. So we're going to use a ternary here, and we'll put a 0. Else, then we don't need a 0. Okay, because if it's 10 or above, then obviously we don't want to add a 0, and then we just want to add the number on like that. Okay, now I don't want to add this to the hour because I don't want like 0, 1 for the hour, but we do want it for the minutes and seconds. So we're just going to wrap this in add 0. Wrap this min like that, and then over here for the second, same thing, add 0 for the second. All right, so let's save that and let's see if that works. So I guess we just have to kind of wait to see if that works, but it should. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't. And we'll check that out in a second. But the next thing we want to do is create a function. Let's just keep it on this. We want to create a function to change the background and the greeting based on the time of day. So let's see if this works once it hits 1 second. And there we go. So now you can see that it's padded with the 0. And the same will go for the minutes. So like I said, we need a function to set background. Let's say set background and greeting. So function, I'm just going to call it set bg greet, I guess. Not the best name, but whatever, it's fine. So the idea that we have to do here is get the time, but we only need the hour because that's what we need to basically run a condition on to see what time of day it is. So let's do let today equals new date, just like we did in the other function, but we only want the hour. So I'm just going to set hour to today dot get hours. Okay. Now remember, hour is going to be 0 through 23. We don't want to format it here in a 12-hour format because we need to see what time of day it is. So we need to check numbers between 0 and 23. So let's do an if statement here, and let's say if, just move this up. Let's say if the hour is less than 12, then we know it's morning. We'll just put a comment. Else if the hour is less than 18, then it's afternoon. Else then it's evening. Okay, so if it's morning, what do we want to do? We want to change the greeting and the background image. So the background image is going to get put on the body. So I'm going to say document.body, and we can just use style here. We can say style.background image, and we can set that in our JavaScript. And we want to set it to URL because we're using an image, a URL. And in here, let's do /image/morning.jpg. Okay, so that should do the background image. Now for the greeting, we have that defined above. Remember, we brought that in. So greeting dot, not style, we want to change the text content to good morning. And then what I'll do is just copy these two lines, and in the afternoon, we're going to change this to afternoon.jpg, and let's change the greeting to afternoon, or good afternoon. And then we'll do the same thing for the evening. I think I called this, the image name is night, .jpg, and let's say good evening. Now, one more thing I want to do here, the evening or the night picture, if we take a look at it, it's dark. So if we have black text on this, it's not going to be very readable. So what I'm going to do is change the document.body.style.color. I'm going to change that from black to white in this case. All right. So basically, if there's other things you want to change depending on the time of day, you can do it in this function. So let's save that. And if we go back, just open up my console here. So we should be getting the image. What did I do wrong here? Oh, I didn't call the function. That would help. So we want set bg greet. All right, let's go back, and there we go. I'm just going to close the old one here. So now that we have this stuff being output by our JavaScript, we can, in our HTML, there's no need to have the time here, this hard-coded time, or this. However, we do want the name still there, but we don't need the greeting or the time, and it should still show. Okay, so the next thing we want to do is the name and the focus. We want those to be editable, which they are. If I click in here, I can change this, and that's fine for the time being, but once I reload, it goes away. It's not going to save it. It's just that attribute simply makes it editable in the browser. It doesn't do anything else. We want to save it to local storage. So in our main.js here, we're basically going to have a set name and a get name, and also a set focus and a get focus. So let's go ahead and let's do let's say get name function get name, and all I want to do here is check to see what is in local storage. If there's nothing in there, we can set a default. If there is something, we'll set that. So let's check. The way that we deal with local storage is we simply say local storage, and then it has some methods attached to it. We want get item. We want to check if there's a local storage item called name. Okay, and we actually want to check to see if it's null, if it's not there. And if it's not there, then we're going to take our name element and we're going to add the text content, and this is where you can set a default. Now what I'm going to do is just have some brackets and say enter name, but if you want to have a default, whatever you want for default, you can put here. Okay, and then we'll have an else. If there is something set, then we want name dot text content to equal whatever is in local storage. So we can say local storage get item, and we want to get the item of name. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and just call get name like that, and go back, and now we see enter name, because there's nothing currently in local storage. I guess we could do the get focus as well, since it's kind of the same thing really. So we're just going to change this to focus and get focus. We're going to change the item in local storage to focus, and for the default, yeah, we'll just do enter focus, except instead of the name attribute or the name element or variable, we want focus. Same thing here, and same thing here. All right, and then down here at the bottom, let's say get focus. You could put them in the same function, but it's fine. So now you can see that we get enter focus, and we can change it, but it doesn't stick yet. All right, so in our HTML, let's get rid of this, and let's get rid of the actual this focus here. because now it's getting inserted through JavaScript, and there shouldn't be anything else we need to do within the HTML or CSS, so I'm going to close that up. So now we need, when we enter a name, or focus for that matter, we need it to update, right? So we're going to have some event listeners. So let's take name and let's add an event listener. Why isn't this giving me IntelliSense? Okay, so we want to do name, add event listener. Now, the way that I want to do this is if the user hits enter, I want it to update and basically clear out. If they type something in, then they click off that area, I also want it to update, and that's called a blur. So we're going to actually have two events that call the same function. We could have them set as separate functions, but I'm just going to do the same. So let's do a key press. Okay, so key press, and then we're going to call set name. All right, and then I'm going to copy this down, and we're going to call set name on blur as well. All right, so let's go up here, and I'm going to go right below get name, and let's do set name. So function set name. Okay, now for set name, we need to make sure that the key press is an enter in order for it to actually update local storage. I don't want it to update local storage on every single key press. We also need to make sure it's a key press. We need to basically tell whether it's a key press or a blur, because both of these are calling the same function. So first thing I'm going to do is check to see if it's an actual key press. Now we have an event parameter that we pass in here, which has a whole bunch of stuff on it, but we want to check the type. So I'm going to say if the type is equal to key press, and then let's have an else, because if it's in the else, then it means it's the blur. All right, now if it's the blur, which means, and let me just show you what I mean by that. When I click in here and I type something, if I just click somewhere else, that's blur. That's the blur event. If I type in here and I hit, and I type anything, that's key press. But I only want it to fire off when I hit enter like that. And it shouldn't do this either, go on to the next line. So with that said, for the blur, it's pretty simple. We can just store in local storage. We can say set item. And let's say we want to set name, and then the second value is what we want to save. Now we want to save whatever is typed in, and we can get that with e.target, meaning we're grabbing the element that was clicked on, in this case the name, and we can get the inner text value, and that's what we want to save. Okay, so that takes care of the blur. Now the key press, we need to do an extra step here. We need to check to see. We'll say make sure enter is pressed. So the way that we can do that, there's actually a few ways. And some, I think one of these is deprecated. I think it's which, but we can say e.which, and basically we're testing to see if this is going to be equal to 13, because every key has a unique identifier. 13 is the enter key. So we're going to check that. Now I believe that's deprecated, but it doesn't work or this doesn't work in some browsers or something like that. So we want to just do both of these. We also want to check the key code. So we want to see if the key code is also equal to 13. That will cover all the browsers, I believe. Okay, so basically when the enter is pressed, we want to do this same exact thing, right? So we'll just grab that. We're going to save whatever's typed in. Now, you saw how when I clicked enter, it went on to the next line. I don't want that to happen. I just want it to basically get out of that state, not have the cursor anymore. So what I can do is just take name and I can call blur like that, and that will take us out of that state. All right, so let's save that, and let's go back, and I'm going to just type something in here. Now, if I hit enter, there we go. You can see it blurs. It just gets out of that state, and if I reload, it sticks. Okay, and if I look in my application, local storage, there it is. And I can actually delete it, reload, and now you can see I can enter it again. And this time I'm not going to hit enter, I'm just going to click somewhere else, and that fires off the blur, which then stores it in local storage. Okay, now we want to do pretty much the same exact thing for focus. So I'm gonna, we could just copy this down, and instead of listening on name, let's listen on focus. And let's call set focus. Okay, and then I'll just copy set name and put this right below get focus. All right, so we want to set focus. Let's see, we want to make sure we save in local storage, save this as focus. I'm just going to Control D to select all three of these and change these to focus. And I think we should be okay. So let's save that and let's go back. I'm just going to reload here. So if I go ahead and I say make a video, enter, and there we go. You can see it's getting added to local storage. If I reload, it goes away. Okay, and I should be able to also blur. So I'll just say hello. And if I click outside of it, that gets updated in local storage. All right. So I think that we're done here. Now, if you want to test out like the greeting and stuff, you could change the time to something else or change the date and time. However, the seconds aren't going to work if we do that, at least the way that I'm going to do it. But I'm going to grab a nighttime date. So let's see. I'm just going to, when you want to do this in show time, I'm going to paste this in, and I'll comment this out. So basically, I'm just setting this to 6/10/2019. I'm setting it to 20, so I'm setting it to nighttime. This is the hours, minutes, seconds. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm not going to leave this. I'm just testing this out. I'm going to do the same thing right here in the BG greet. And let's go ahead and save this. And if we go back, now we get good evening, Brad. And we have the night background. It also says 8:33. One thing we didn't do though, guys, is we didn't put the AM or PM, which you don't have to if you don't want to. I mean, you might actually, what we could do is put an option for it. So if we go, I wasn't planning on doing this, but if we do const show AM PM, and let's set that to true. And what I meant to do earlier is put the AM PM, this variable right here, within the inner HTML. So I'll go right here, put a space, but instead of just putting AM or PM, let's do show AM or PM. If that's true, then we'll show the AM or PM variable. Else, we'll show nothing. All right, so let's save that and go back, and we get PM. All right, and it's according to this time. Now I'm going to just get rid of this just because I just wanted to test it out. So we want to get rid of that. What else? This right here. Get rid of that. And now if we go back, there we go. Good, and we get PM. And if you want to mess around with the dates and, you know, check the morning one, you can do that. But I'm pretty sure it works. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I mean, it wasn't a complicated project, but I think it's good for people that are beginner to intermediate JavaScript. I enjoy doing things that don't require a framework or library or anything. If you're building something as simple as this, there's no need to use React. There really isn't. Maybe Svelte. I'm kind of digging Svelte for small little applications, but even then, this was easy enough to do without anything. So that's it, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it, and please leave a like if you did, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey guys, one of the best, if not the best resource I can refer you to for starting a freelance business is at studywebdevelopment.com/freelancing. The creator Kyle shared it with me, and I can personally vouch that this bundle is well worth it. You get a 130-page guide to freelancing, and it comes with things like invoice templates, client proposals, HTML and CSS templates, a portfolio website, access to a private Facebook community, and much more. So use the code BRAD25 to get 25% off today.